Hey everyone, today for another vlog. A Wednesday vlog. Usually I make them in the weekend, but I don't know, I just feel like hitting up the record. Thinking about what's on my mind lately. It's like how fucking complicated change is, or maybe I'm the one who makes it complicated. I don't know. But it's a tricky problem. Right? It's one of those dynamic, no formula fits all situations type of deal. But the way I would start is that I think a lot of attempts to change ourselves are very misguided. I'm not talking about the usual, New Year's Eve resolution. That doesn't matter. But that's very true. That happens a lot. Those super ambitious things that like are pushed in the future. I think a lot of people are quite aware that those don't work. I'm trying to talk about something more broader, uh, like more in terms of approach to yourself. So like the two main characteristics that you see that are very misguided is the first one is that how much shame is used as a fuel to create the change or to keep the motivation up. Um, our culture is really much shame based, honestly. Like a lot of productivity and stuff is based on shame. The sense of like if I don't succeed, then I'm a piece of shit type of thing, basically. Or like like if I don't exercise, then I will never, no one will ever like me, that kind of thing, right? Uh, because I'll be fat or whatever. The second aspect is somewhat linked to that, but it's not the same. It's like this approach of trying to push harder rather than trying to perceive uh, sort of like resistance that you're not perceiving. Like typically this leads to you being trapped, trying to push and push and push, when you're the one creating the resistance because of something you're not seeing. So, in essence, the resistance, the key point about this second one is that the resistance is not something that you currently see. Because if you did see it, then you would be able to change yourself, and therefore you would not struggle with this way. So if you struggle with change, it's very likely that there's something about you and your dynamic that you do not perceive clearly enough. So typically, the main one is that people try to remove coping mechanisms. A coping mechanism is, as the name suggests, something that you use to cope with. You can't just remove those. It's quite simple. You can't just remove those. It would be like trying to remove one of your crutch and being surprised when it doesn't work. Uh, you need that crutch right now. That doesn't mean that you will need it forever, but the transition matters, right? Between not having a crutch and having a crutch. So the transition matters, and so the coping mechanism you could sort of think it like it's I think Visa calls it a weight bearing structure or something. It's something that holds weight. It supports you, and so you can't just remove it like this, especially not by moralizing it and saying, "Oh, it's bad." So like typically, porn is not to mean that you can just quit by moralizing yourself that it's bad and that it ruins your life. This will not work. It also, it also, it's also the first point about shame being used as a fuel to change that. That those two are really nasty um, consequences of the way a lot of people approach change, and the basic consequence is that it doesn't work. Like it simply doesn't work. Uh, no, I'm not gonna say what works because it's not like I'm some fucking guru that can, fucking change my life if I so wish. Uh, in a sense, you could say change is quite simple. Change is like the mix of observation, actions, and time. Like that's kind of it. If you wanted to boil it down, but of course the specifics are very important, right? Because the reason why the specifics are important is because you yourself are the resistant towards change, and so like being able to continually be good at sort of dissolving your inner resistance, right? And being able to see the ways in which you hide things from yourself and such. That's really hard, right? So you kind of need specifics to work on usually, but like I think in essence it's kind of like this simple three components like observation, action, and giving that loop of observation plus action enough time. Um, I think the only specific advice that has really been like absolute in my life, as absolute as advice can be in a new human, is to really be kind to yourself, right? It's the reverse of the first point that I mentioned about shame being used. I think being kind to yourself is really, really the best starting point because um, for the simple reason that it works. It works better. Uh, it just works better. Like when you're kind to yourself, at least you can start having more, open conversations with yourself, rather than the typical thing of like, you just look at your results and stuff, right? So, um, I guess the second piece of idea that has been pretty useful for me is like to think more in terms of trajectory rather than in terms of position or results, if you could prefer that term. Trajectory is difficult to assess, however, and that's kind of where a lot of problems happen. Is that the way we assess trajectory is like by trying to like measure things, like I need to read 10 pages a day or something. That's how often we try to like steer ourselves with is with those metrics. Metrics can be metrics. They tend to like lose their power over time. If you've had that experience, I have that experience all the time. Like at some point you just start feeling a slave to the matrix, to the matrix, to the metric, and the kind of number game of keeping it up. Like you just do it to keep up the number, but like the practice is kind of dead. If you've ever experienced that. Um, yeah, I think those are probably like the two only ones I would say are like strict. I mean, a book like Atomic Habits provides a lot of cool ways to get like short-term results, but I think long-term changes are more tricky than just a series of incremental changes. But I think those are good. Right? Those are good to start. So like the four principles of Atomic Habits, if I remember correctly, I don't think I will remember them. But the first one is like make it visible. The second one is like make it satisfying. Right? So satisfying to like do. And the third one is like make it attractive. So like make it good to start. Right? Because starting is like the hardest part usually. I'm not sure. I'm just gonna Google Atomic Habits, the four. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. Right? So, uh, obvious and attractive are what allows you to get started easier. That's a huge deal. Make it easy is a way to keep up the habit, right? It's to use momentum in your favor. And satisfying is the way to keep it going, right? So, like, once you're done, you feel satisfied with yourself. So, I think Atomic Habits is really good for like implementing habits, as the name is implied. Um, I think the problem is that changes in life also require like you could say paradigm shifts, seeing yourself under a different light, seeing reality under a different light, and those are not mechanical. Those don't happen through habits, but habits are important. Right? Habits are very important. I would definitely recommend. I'm definitely glad I read that book. It's good for like reading up, getting up the habits, but it's not good for like the type of like perspective changes that some you sometimes require. Which is why when it comes to like specific advice, it always feels like there's like an equal and opposite valid one. I feel like so you could say you know work on changing yourself incrementally. That's what would be one side. The other side would be that change can actually be a lot easier if you do it all in one go. Actually, like in some senses, like it would be hard to like let's say um it's hard to give examples of addiction because I'm not even sure if that's true. But like one of the examples that Jacob Lonfisker gives in his book, You Live Time Extreme, is that it's a lot easier to just start living a much more frugal life all in one go rather than like trying to trickle it down slowly and have to spend less and less basically. He says that it's much easier to just give it up all and to just start, making your own stuff and cooking and whatever. And I think it's definitely been my case. Although I've never been a huge spender, so I don't know how the transition feels. I could definitely see why in that case, like spending is not like it's not like a hard addiction, right? Like you could just find another hobby, another way to spend the time. Yeah. In my opinion, the reason why people spend is because they're bored. Right? It's not like an addiction, where it's a bit more tricky why people engage in it. Spending is mostly because people are bored, I would say. So that would be like one example of like where two opposite advice feel very valid each. Another one would be like, should you focus on like doing stuff or should you focus on observing yourself and just waiting? the value of observing yourself, it might sound like you're just delaying or just like, fucking masturbating, like doing intellectual masturbation, but like the reason why observing yourself is so important is because we do not know ourselves very well, if at all. And so to try to change ourselves without knowing ourselves can be really, really dangerous because you could basically try to like work against yourself. Like, you could, imagine you feel like you're too scared of people or like you're too emotional or something. Well, being emotional in some ways can be really important and can be really core to who you are. Like it's typically great for art, right? Like I think that's kind of like the cliche, but it's kind of true at the same time. So like trying to change yourself without knowing yourself could risk running into that. Like you're kind of fighting against yourself in a very, very like fundamental way. You're even trying to like erase some of your strengths. But of course, it could also be used as an excuse. Like this whole thing about observing yourself could be used as an excuse to not do anything, of course. Right? So that's why the just do things is kind of wise as well. So you have the same opposition as well. A third example of like where you have the an interesting dichotomy or like one where two opposite advice are valid is when it comes to like short and medium term goals. Like, should you make specific plans or should you just, do what feels nice for the short term? For the long term, it's harder to say. But like, in the long term, specific plans they don't work. So I think anyone who has tried them knows for sure that has knows that it just doesn't work. Like humans do not make long term plans, but in the short term and medium term, should you make like specific plans to keep you on track, or should you just do what feels nice? What just piques your curiosity, right? Like it could really depend. Some people really need like discipline and something straight, and they would benefit from like the specific plans. But some people really need to just lay off the steam and uh, just do what feels nice. Right? It's kind of really depends on people. So I think what I keep running into is that I'm just kind of fucking confused right now about life. I have read a decent amount to the point where it might actually have actually not helped me. Like kind of the opposite, right? Like y there's so many options you consider that you kind of do nothing. That's called decision paralysis. Um, but I think the general vibe I feel these days is that I should do I'm basically looking for like better ways to cope and better ways to just be in my body. But like I do whatever feels nice. Essentially, that's usually what I gravitate towards. In a way that preferably is not like doesn't like ruin my health or something, but like just ruin my like mental health or like my capacity to focus. But I usually tend to focus on more short term things these days. Actually, um, I don't know, just what feels right. It feels like I've always done things to force myself. Feels like I've always had to force myself to do things, and it doesn't feel nice at all. And it feels quite awful in my body actually now. Yeah, so that's the usual vibe I have these days. Um, I also try to do like really short, really small experiments each day, like just a small thing, right? Like noticing a certain discomfort, trying to do something, and then I try to go for the slightly discomfortable one, but it's never a huge thing, right? It's never a huge thing. It's usually uh just talking to someone or like how to say, just trying out a slightly different thing, listening to slightly different music, and it is actually pretty interesting the extent to which it's starting to feel quite different, right? Like I didn't realize to what extent, for example, I enjoy listening to, for example, like Linkin Park. I actually really like listening to these guys. Something really nice about like the energy they give. Uh, I think when I was younger, I would have called it, edgy music or whatever. But I think I just like it. I don't know. I like the energy. It's very genuine. Very very powerful voice. Maybe the lyrics are not so deep. I don't know, but it's a very genuine. At least the lyrics are pretty genuine. Like usually Linkin Park is about the singer. I'm not sure about the other people, but the singer at least the singer struggles. Very yeah, it's pretty scary. I would imagine to just share about that right in front of a lot of people. So it's something very powerful about listening to Linkin Park. Honestly, I don't just listen to Linkin Park, but like I'm kind of like in that vibe now. just want to fucking scream. I don't know what to say. Um, Life has felt kind of weird actually. I actually enjoy drawing more lately because I think I've kind of given up this trying to like draw without a reference. Like I've just given that up for now. Like I just draw with references now. That doesn't mean I'm just a slave to the reference, but it feels a lot nicer. It's a lot nicer to draw with a reference. Um, yeah, I'm not sure what to say. I'm just doing things that are nice now. Just following things that are easy. It actually feels, you know what? It things have actually been way more stable now. So definitely I thought I could keep going. I'm not really sure what to say. I'm kind of rambling, but I don't have a huge thing I want to say. I think the just general vibe is I'm quite confused, but I know what I don't want to do. Like these are the things I'm most sure of in life for now. I know for sure that there's some things I do not want to do, such as some paths now I do not want to commit. I do not want to commit to anything that will tie me, uh, you know, in a long to a long period. In the short term, right? So I don't want to like commit too much right now. I just want to like explore when I'm young. Yeah, I know a lot of things I don't want, but knowing what I want for sure is hard because the thing is, there is like the want in my mind, which is very clear. I know what I want in my mind, but I don't want to say it because it's only in my mind and my body is not really following. Like I'm just when I say my body is not following, what I'm saying is essentially that like it's either a mix of like tiredness or tension, which are kind of like mirrors of each other, right? Being tired often leads you to being anxious often leads you to being tired at least. Um, yeah, so I think the call for me this period is clearly to take care of that, like what could be more important than taking care of the body and examining in what way I don't treat it well. I think it's like this general sense of like accumulating stress in an environment that doesn't really allow me to like regulate it, right? So like the office environment doesn't really allow me to regulate it. When I'm at home, it's much better because I can just just get up whenever I want. I can do that a lot because a lot of the times you you're not just working 24/7, right? A lot of the times you're just waiting for something to compile or whatever. So yeah, I'm starting to ramble. Might as well just end it right now. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.